This is tech number 913960, bringing a video clip in relation to the Strikepack FPS Dominator Wired Generation Next Generation Mod Pack. It's actually an instructional video, and we're going to do the best we can to give the definitive information in regards to the utilization of it. It's definitely worth purchasing, I can tell you that. I haven't really put it too much to the test in the field, but the foundations are definitely exciting and worth venturing into. There is no doubt about it. So let's go ahead and begin to get all this critical detailed information in for recording purposes and viewing, to train the mind to recall, become easier at the utilization of it. Now, what happens is the device actually attaches to the controller in a very comfortable way. It's not, it doesn't cause any discomfort at all. It seats in pretty easily by adapting it to the USB connector on the upper section of the controller, and it clips around. I will use a screen that shows a controller to try to give the best information as possible. I do not have a video such as other people where you could see me in the corner and I could actually physically talk. But I can get all the points across by doing a foundation that will follow, and then I will actually have to put it to the test in the field as well. I have tested certain things and they are fantastic. So, that information in place, let's go ahead and begin. First thing is, once applying the device to the controller, and you can have it affixed there, the most important thing is every time you do turn on the system, you will have to redo the procedure, which isn't really that bad at all. And it's a matter of turning on the system. The pack could be installed onto the controller but not plugged in USB wise. Obviously, whenever you turn on the PS4, you're prompted to log in. Who is the user that's going to be using the controller? You go ahead and do so. My suggestion is to enter into the game that you're going to play, and then once you do that, you're going to place the USB adapter into the top of the strike pad. Once you do, and upon doing that, you'll actually be reversed back out to the login screen, recognizing the fact of the new application. It should have an icon of, let alone the controller, but a headset there, which is representing the Strikepack. And then you're going to log in. Who is using this controller, you would log in again. Right now, the Strikepack is actually ready for programming, and let's go ahead and get critical details in relation to it in the proper order to the best of my ability at the present time. I just purchased the device yesterday, so bear with me, and like I said, stand by. Alright, here it is. The first thing you have to do within the game that you're playing, in this case we're going to use WW2 for the scenario. You have to go into your settings, and you have to make sure the settings are proper. And what you would go to your so-called controls, and when you go to the button layout, this must be in a mode that's compatible to the system. The button layout is in default, which is compatible to the system. Some games have like tactical, which you could program in, and things like that as well. But here's the most critical piece of information in regards to it, because it will not work if you do this feature. And that is, I'd like to enable my flip aspect of the L1, R1, and L2, R2 buttons, which in terminology they're known as the L1, R1 are bumper buttons, and the L2, R2 buttons are actually the trigger buttons. I like to flip them, but this will not allow the Strikepack to function. So in order for me to actually program in the Strikepack and have it to work, it'll actually appear to be programming, but it will not work. I must change this over to disabled. And once I do that, I could actually re-enable the flipping of the buttons within the Strikepack itself, which cures that problem. So very important is that you must go into settings. You must choose your button layout that matches up to the Strikepack. Default is one of them. That's the one I always use. But critical is the fact that the flip button scenario cannot be enabled. It must be disabled. With that information in place, stand by. Okay, with that information in place in the initial startup, like I said, every time you start up, you're going to have to do this procedure. Make sure it's unplugged, plug it in after startup. I believe it's best to be in the so-called game that you're going to play as well. You'll quickly log out, you'll log back in, indicator of the headset, let alone with the controller, will be in the new login, and now you're ready to program the device. The device itself actually has two modes that are involved in it. Some of this terminology is going to be my own. The first one is going to be tournament mode, and in that mode it allows you to remap your buttons, in which you could assign specific buttons. In some cases, according to other YouTube videos that I saw, you could actually assign multiple buttons to a paddle on the strike pad. And this is the terminology that should be used. The R1, L1 button are bumpers, the R2, L2 button are triggers, and the strike pad, what you would see, the strike pad carries the so-called paddles, okay? Which are in the lower section, fitting where you grip the controller very comfortably as well. And there's also additional ones that could be purchased, which I definitely am going to do to find the one that's most comfortable for me. There's also the fact that when you do put the strike pad on, it does cover up the microphone jack on the on the controller, forcing you to actually almost have to purchase another microphone scenario for the Strikepack in its own. I'm not really sure if you could do it with just a like a wireless headset system, which you probably can. However, moving along, as I stated, there's two primary modes, which are indicated by an LED on the rear of the Strikepack, in the dead center of the rear. The first mode, as stated, is tournament, which allows you to remap buttons, and the second mode is mod application. Again, like I said, my terminology. The tournament mode is the LED is white, and the mod application, the LED is blue. Now let's go ahead and give some details, and I'm going to go to settings and use that screen with the picture of the controller, and try to give as many highlighted areas as possible, as I try also to give as much critical detail as well. Stand by. Okay, we're going to have to use our imagination here, due to the fact that, like I said, I don't have an actual camera that I could show myself and the actual device and demonstrate that way, but I could definitely do it this way. And what happens is the Strikepack actually clips onto the unit in a synergistic fashion. The upper section plugs into the USB adapter there. It folds along the back side, and then there's a swing arm button that actually comes over and locks in around the PS4 button into the three ports that are for the speaker, in which it converts it over and locks it into place. Very snug, very comfortable. The paddle buttons actually fall down at the base on the inner portions of the grip area, and I will use highlights to show this as well, as can be seen. So what happens is, now that it's in place and now that it's plugged in, what happens is we would have to begin a so-called programming procedure. Initially, it starts off in the default mode of tournament. I'm almost sure of it. Like I said, this is brand new, in which on the back and the rear of the controller, directly dead center, is going to be an LED, which relates to the mode that you're actually in at the present time. When the LED is white, you're in tournament mode. When the LED is blue, you are going to be in mod application mode, and or modification mode. And the way that you actually change the mode that you're in is in a procedure that's going to be explained. Now, let me give the details on exactly what's on this this strike pad that's adapted. We have the light indicator, which was mentioned already, which is directly dead center in the column where the USB cable plugs up on top. To the left and right of that, we have two buttons that are affixed to the back of the strike pad and the strike pack, and what I want to label those buttons are as set buttons: left set button and right set button. And then directly below that we have obviously the paddles that bleed out into the handle area. Now across the upper section, the top, in between the division of centrigistics where the USB cable plugs in, we have a series of LED lights that run across, 4 on each side, on the left and the right of the controller. When the controller is in your hands facing you, such as the video of this controller here, the LED lights actually run in a sequence of 1 through 8, 4 on the left, 4 on the right. And that's the critical layout of the Strikepack. Now it's a matter of figuring out how to use it. So here it is, we start up, we're in tournament mode. And that gives us the ability to remap buttons. We'll use my scenario because I like, whenever I had a scuff controller in the past, to relocate 2 primary buttons. The drop button, which is going to be the circle, and the X button, which is going to be my jump. So if in fact I wanted to do this to this controller right here using the Strikepack, the procedure would be as follows. I would press and hold the left direction pad. While holding it down, I would go ahead and I would press the left set button on the rear of the controller, hold it down at the same time, and then I would press circle and release. So I'm going to press the left direction pad and hold. I'm going to press the left set button and hold. Both of them are being held. I'm going to press the circle button and release. Now what happens is I have now remapped the circle button, which is drop, to the left paddle of the strike pad. The circle button will still function in the aspect of drop, but now the left paddle button will also do the same. Now I want to remap my jump button, which is X. I'm going to do the same general procedure, however I'm going to use the right set button on the back of the controller of the Strikepack. I'm going to hold the left direction pad down. While holding it down, I am also going to press the right set button and hold it down. And I'm going to press the X button and release. And what happens is now the jump button, which is X, is transferred to the right paddle of the Strikepack. So understand that you press the left direction pad, which seems to be a key element, left direction, right direction in this, but there's multiple parts in that D-pad. But by pressing the left direction and holding it down, and while it's being held down, you're going to press either the left or the right set button and hold it down as well. Now you can relocate any button to the left paddle, and the same in reverse for the right. Left direction pad being held down. As you're holding it down, you would press the right set button on the Strikepack, holding both of these buttons in place. You can now choose any button to be relocated to the right paddle. The only buttons, according to what I heard, that will not be able to be transferred to the paddles is the trigger buttons on the remote control, which is the R2, L2. And that's the way you would remap buttons. Now, according to a video that I saw on YouTube, one individual said you could actually put multiple buttons on one side. For some reason he was using like X and circle. I don't know what game would relate to that and why. But say I wanted to put X and circle onto one paddle, and we'll use the left paddle as an example. I would press and hold the left direction pad down, the left directional pad down. I would then, as I'm holding it, press the left set button and hold it at the same time, and I would enter in X and circle and release. And now I transferred both of those buttons, according to that information, I haven't tried it, to the left paddle. And that's the way you would do your settings in tournament mode on the unit. Now, I believe when you initially turn it on, it automatically comes into that area. It comes into the tournament mode ability to map out the buttons, which is white on the indicator that falls directly in the dead center of the rear area of the Strikepack. However, now we want to get into modifications and we want to apply mods. So first of all, the first thing we need to do is get into the modification mode, my terminology. And the way that we do this is we hold the left set button down, and then we press the right set button and release. And when we take notice to it, when we turn around and look at the LED, it should now be blue. If I wanted to go back to tournament mode, I would do the same procedure to remap. I would press the left set button down, and I would go ahead and I would press the right set button and release. And when I turn around and look at the back of the unit, it should be in white. So here it is. Let's go ahead and get into discussions in relation to applying modifications. So before I even take a break for just a second, I just put myself into tournament mode for mapping. I am going to change it back over to modifications, in which I'm going to press the left set button, hold it down, press the right set button, and release. And sure enough, I'll be in the modifications mode, and the light LED on the direct dead center of the Strikepack will be blue. Okay, pretty much we gave good detail in regards to so-called tournament mode and remapping. That's a pretty easy scenario right there, and the information is just self-explanatory. What you do, what this Strikepack has given you the ability to do, is to remap buttons that you would want to place instead of on the controller in the common locations to the so-called paddles of the Strikepack. But now we get into the more detailed information, or the harder one in the scenario of there's a lot more intricacy involved in modifications. But they definitely made it user-friendly, and let's see if we can give a good example of it. The first thing is, across the top of the Strikepack, there's 8 indicator lights, 4 on each side of center joysticks, all right? Meaning that the controller has a USB adapter that plugs into it directly on the top. It has to be a wired system. It is a wired controller, Strikepack. And on the left side, we have 4 indicator lights that run across the top, and on the right side, we have 4 indicators as well. And the way that it works is it's with the controller facing you, such as the diagram on the screen, the indicator lights run from left to right as if you're reading, 1 through 8. These represent the classes that could be modified, classes in their own, each LED representing a class. And within each one of the classes, multiple modifications, or a modification could be done, multiple modifications could be done. And you could also fine-tune the modification as well, which I haven't really gotten deeper into. This is just a basic, try to quick start it, even though it's going to take a little bit long because of the intricacy. So, the way the 8 classes are actually laid out are as follows. The first one is the primary weapon fire. The second one is the secondary weapon fire. The third LED is adjustable anti-recoil. The fourth LED is quick scope. The fifth LED is auto run. The sixth LED is drop shot. The seventh LED is going to be the left paddle modification, and the 8th LED is going to be the right paddle modification. And that's the classes that run along the top with multiple modifications that occur within. So the first one is going to be modifying the primary weapon. The second one is going to be modifying the secondary weapon. If we jump over, the 7th one is going to be modifying the left paddle, and the 8th one is going to be modifying the right paddle. And then in between there, 3 is anti-recoil, 4 is quick scope, 5 is auto run, and 6 is drop shot, which actually, and I haven't tried it, more than likely will affect the circle button for the common drop layout. If it's, which has to be like a default setting, Maybe in tactical and things they may switch around to different areas, but let's just use default setting for the foundation of it, the common default. Alright, so here it is. This is the way we're going to work it and try to modify the slots. And you can have numerous ones in. But if you go ahead and so I found that if I try to overload it with modifications, the controller actually freezes up. So you do have to be careful, and more than likely one of the modifications might have conflicted with the other, causing a so-called lockout. So now what happens is we're going to do several procedures here in order to modify, in order to remodify, delete, and things like that, and reset. And so let's get into the procedure. The first thing is we would want to, of course, again we are in mapping mode, blue indicator on the rear of the receiver. And the way that you scan through the classes for modification and adjust classes is as follows. You would go ahead and you would press again the left direction button on the D-pad. You would press left and hold it down. And while keeping it depressed, you would actually use X and square to cycle through the LEDs 1 through 8, the classes. And you would use triangle and circle to, let alone apply the modification, but to scan through the available adjustments or categories that fall within each class, which are many of them. I mean, like say for instance primary weapon, you have the ability to apply like 8 or 9 different modifications within the primary weapon. So if I was, which is number 1, we'll use 1 as an example. So if I want to program 1, the primary weapon, I would hold the left direction pad down. I would press X or square to trigger the indicator lights to run across the classes involved. Since we're dealing with 1, immediately, more than likely, the LED would be highlighted on the first indicator light to the far left. And if not, I would just use X and square to cycle until I do highlight indicator light number 1, LED number 1, which is class number 1, which is primary weapon. And still, like I said, holding the left direction pad down, I would now use triangle and circle to move up and down in the modifications within the class. I only really use triangle. Each time you press triangle, what happens is the light bar on the top of the remote control will flash in an intermittent series, showing the modification slot, and that's within the class. So if I wanted the third modification in the class to be applied, I would actually press, say, the triangle button 3 times. And when I do that, the indicator light bar on top of the controller will flash 3 times, hesitate, and continue flashing 3 times, hesitate, in a procedure like that, showing I've chosen the third slot within the modification that I have chosen, okay, under primary weapon. Now with that information right there, we will go ahead and say apply a mod to the primary weapon. And I like the first one, which is rapid fire. I want rapid fire on both my primary and my secondary weapon. There are multiple mods within there that I could actually choose, but I like the first one. So because of that, I'm just going to immediately program my primary weapon LED 1 and my secondary weapon LED 2 with rapid fire. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to hold the left direction pad down, and then I am going to press X or square to cycle through the LEDs until I highlight LED 1. And when I am on LED 1, which the blue indicator light will show on the top of the strike pack, I'm going to press triangle once and release. Now I have assigned rapid fire to the primary weapon, and it does work. Now I want to modify slot number 2, my secondary weapon. I'm going to press and hold the left direction pad, and while holding it, I'm going to press X or square to cycle through the LEDs until I highlight LED 2, and I'm going to press triangle once and release. And now I have applied rapid fire to the secondary weapon. Now if you press the left direction pad down and hold it, and you cycle through with X and square to the different LEDs on the top 1 through 8, which are classes, if you release the direction pad, it will not apply. You must apply it with triangle and circle, and I've only really truly used triangle so far. So when you press down the left direction pad and hold it and you cycle through with X and square, the LED will in fact scan across the top of the controller, blue indicator light, but once you release the direction pad, it'll disappear from sight, showing no application was applied to the slot. The only way you could truly apply it after holding the left direction pad down, X and square to choose the LED, is by choosing triangle for sure and circle as well. And then let alone that, once you do begin that procedure, the slot within the class that's chosen will actually be controlled or initiated by the triangle and circle button, triangle going up in the slots and circle going back down in the slots. Say for instance I wanted to apply a subdivision or slot or a modification within a class that was in wasn't one like the rapid fire we just did, and I want to apply the third subdivision in the class, my terminology only, just use that, and I want to say apply that to the left paddle, which is indicator number 7, LED number 7, class number 7. This is the way I would do it. I would hold the left direction pad down, and while I'm holding it, I'm going to cycle through the classes with X and square. Once I highlight LED number 7, which is class number 7, blue indicator light will show on the top of the strike pad, of course. What happens is I'm going to then press the triangle button 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And what happens is now, and then for the example, I'm actually going to press it, I want 3, like I just explained, but I'm going to hit it accidentally 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. What happens is now the light bar on the top of the remote control is going to flash 4 times, slight hesitation, 4 times, slight hesitation, and this will continue to go on as long as you're holding the left direction pad down. But that's not what I want. So what I need to do is I need to go back to 3. More than likely I could cycle all the way through by continuously pressing triangle, but I could easily remedy that just by pressing circle once, which now will take it from the 4th slot mod within the class back to the 3rd one. And the verification would be that the top bar light will now flash 3 times and intermittent 3 times. And I would release, and I just applied it. Whatever that would be, I applied it to the left paddle modification. And that's the way you would do it. Now, let me give some. So now there's 2 ways of so-called clearing the modifications, and also and let me explain how to do that. First thing is, say we wanted to delete a single mod. I have a mod that I placed in slot number 4, which is quick scope, and I want to take quick scope off for some reason, but I have all my other mods in place. According to the information that I heard, which I haven't put it to the test yet, this is the way that you would do it. You would hold the left direction pad down. You would press X and square to cycle to the 4th slot. Quick scope is what I want to remove. And then you would press circle. That's what I heard. And, so maybe it is triangle on the cycle through and not circle. So you have to investigate into it. But that supposedly was the way you could remove the modifications. By pressing the left direction pad and holding it down, X and square to cycle through. Once the LED is on the slot you want to remove, you would press circle. Try it, see if it works. The next thing is you could actually clear all of the modifications. And this definitely works. And the way that you do it is you hold the bottom direction pad down for about 5 seconds. And as you're holding it down, the indicator bar light on the top of the remote control will turn off. And once it turns off, you hit options. And you'll feel a vibration in the controller. And when you release it, the lower direction pad, all of the slots will be clear. There will be no blue indicator lights. So again, and it's called a master reset. To do a master reset, which I don't think affects anything that was mapped out in tournament mode, you would hold the direction pad down and keep it held down for about 5 seconds, and then the light bar on the top of the remote control will disappear, and you would press options. You'll feel a short vibration, and all of the mod slots will be cleared off. And that's the way that you would add mods, remove mods, maybe singularly. That one you have to put it to the test more. But you also have a master reset, which definitely works the way I just explained it. And I want to give some critical information in regards to other features. The first one, actually, to attack and address, which I need to do immediately, is I want my flip buttons back. I want my my bumper buttons transferred to the trigger buttons, and I want the trigger buttons brought up in front of the bumper buttons, the way that I normally set it in so-called the button configuration. Default is the setting, but I want the flip button aspect involved. And the way that you flip the buttons is you hold the right direction pad down for about 3 seconds. When you do that, the indicator bar light on top of the remote control will turn white. When it does that, you would press the L1 button and release, and the indicator bar light on top of the remote control will now turn green. And as long as it turned green, you have now flipped the buttons. So again, critical for me, of course, is that if I want to flip the buttons, which I do, I'm going to hold the right direction pad down. I am going to wait about 3 seconds, and the bar light on top of the remote control will turn white. And then I'm going to press the L1 button, and the bar light will turn green. And now I have flipped the buttons. And does it work? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And that's the primary foundation. It really is. And I got to think of additional things that I want to apply for the video purposes and education in the so-called book within a video. Okay, here it is. We'll continue on. One of the things I do want to say in regards to this is the fact that there are modifications that you can do within each one of the classes. The modifications are done, like I said, by using the triangle and selecting the so-called subdivision within a modification of a class that could be applied. Let alone that it also says that the L1 and the L2 and R2 buttons, which is the trigger buttons on the rear, allow you to do fine-tune modifications. I haven't gotten that deep. I only got it yesterday, so let's just go along with it. Most important thing is you have a pretty decent instructional guide that comes with it, and of course you should read that to the fullest degree, and it does carry all the detailed information that's required. So what happens is now we're going to use general scenario. I'm going to explain the way I would lay out a setup for myself in regards to it, and this area will show, will give the detailed information in regards to the subject at hand, programming the modifications within each category. Like I said, and we'll use one for an example, is we'll use the modification of the primary weapon fire, which is LED 1 on the remote, on the Strikepack. Okay, within primary weapon fire, there are, let's see, let me count them. There are 8 subdivision modifications that could be done in that category, in which by pressing the triangle you would cycle to each one. And the first one, which is the one I set immediately on the information feed that I've already given, is rapid fire. The second one would actually be adjustable rapid fire. The third one would be Black Ops 3 jitter. The fourth one would be adjustable burst fire. The fifth one would be pulse fire. The sixth one is IW jitter. The seventh one is IW tac jitter. And the final one is MW jitter. Okay? Additional information in parentheses. Going to show within each category there are multiple subdivisions of modifications within. Okay? The class's primary weapon that we're discussing, primary weapon modification or fire. And then when we go in there, we have multiple ones that we could choose, and the way that we do it is selecting by the triangle, pressing the triangle. And the indicator light on the top of the remote control flashes in relation to which one you chose, you know, in that case like 1 through 8 or whatever. Alright, well, in one of them I definitely have to do that because I watched the YouTube video and I found, the instructions on how to, let alone at that time, I discovered the mistake that I was making by having my buttons flipped, which can't be done. That's why I couldn't understand, and I was really worried that it wouldn't work on the game WW2. And what happened was I went in and I saw a YouTube available video that related to applying a drop shot in WW2, and I was like, whoa, great. Let alone I got two answers right there. For one, I definitely want my drop shot to be applied, and the next thing is I want to, and I got verification that it would work within WW2. When I went into there, let alone that, I found out where my mistake was, which is that I had my button layout in default, which was okay, but I had the buttons flipped. And then when I look in the booklet, it specifically tells you that. So I just missed it. And you know, you get an excitement, you want to get right into the action. Anyway, what happens is now, I want to set up my controller. And there are definitely 4 categories, or even possibly 5 that I want to work on. It's going to be my primary weapon, my secondary weapon. I would want anti-recoil. I do want to justify and modify my left paddle and my right paddle. So let's go ahead and do that as an example. First thing is, here I am, I'm in the mode. The indicator light on the rear of the Strikepack is in blue. I am going to set these up. So I'm going to press and hold the left direction pad down. I'm going to use X and square till I highlight LED number 1, which is class number 1. I'm going to press triangle once and release and let it go. Okay? Let the direction pad go. So again, I don't want to mess up my words. I'm going to hold the left direction pad down. And while holding it down, I'm going to use X and square until I highlight LED number 1, class 1, primary weapon fire. I'm going to press triangle and release. Once I do that, I have now applied rapid fire to my primary weapon. Now we'll do the secondary weapon. I'm going to press the left direction pad and hold it down. I'm going to use X and square to highlight the LED number 2, class number 2, secondary weapon fire. And I'm going to press triangle once and release. Now I've placed rapid fire on the secondary weapon. I am going to apply adjustable anti-recoil. I'm going to press the left direction pad and hold it down. I'm going to use X and square to cycle to LED number 3, which is class number 3, adjustable anti-recoil. And I'm going to press the triangle button once and release it. I want to apply drop shot to my left paddle. So the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to hold the left direction pad down. I'm going to use the X and square to cycle through until I highlight LED number 7, which is left paddle modification. I am going to press the triangle button 4 times. I'm going to verify the light and that I am on the 4th slot by the light bar flashes that appear on the top of the remote control, in which they'll flash 4 times, have an intermission, 4 times, intermission. It'll keep doing that. And then once I see it, and I see it flash 4 times, I'm going to release. And what happens is now I have applied the drop shot feature to the left paddle and it works. All right. Now I want to say apply a different procedure to the right paddle, and I want to apply the modification that falls in, say, category 5. The way that I would do it is hold the left direction pad down. Use X and square to cycle through the LEDs until I highlight slot number 8, LED number 8, which is right paddle modification. I would press the triangle button 5 times. Watch the indicator light flashing, as if it flashes 5 times, I know I'm on the right one. Release, and I have now programmed in my right paddle. And that would be it. I would be good to go. I could jump out there and go. Now, that critical foundation, because I definitely want it in regards to applying the drop shot to the paddle button. I choose the left one. It was critical for me. All right. So again, the way that I did it is I held the left direction pad down, and while holding it down, I used X and square to cycle through the LEDs until I highlighted class 7. Once I highlighted class 7, I pressed the triangle button 4 times. I looked at the indicator light, it flashed 4 times. I released, and it went, and the application went in. And now I've applied a drop shot feature to the left paddle. By dropping down now, let alone in my dropping, I'm immediately firing upon the target, which is what I want. And obviously I don't want to be shooting all the time that I drop down, so what I would do is when I want to remain silent and just use it for crouching, going prone, ditching out under cover, whatever it may be, I would still use circle. But if I want to try to take out the enemy with a drop shot, I would use the left paddle. Now there's a feature in there which is LED number 6, class number 6, which is drop shot. I haven't tried it yet, but I bet you what happens is when you go to that indicator, that class, and you press triangle to apply, what happens is that feature actually goes onto the circle button, in which the circle button would now be my drop shot and firing upon the drop, and I'm almost sure of it. And that's about it. You know, that's about the layout right there. That about completes it out. You know, I can't think of anything else that I would want to say at the present time other than putting it to the test. Does the rapid fire really work? Does the anti-recoil really work? Do these things work for me? They do work as far as certain things I've tested already, but do I want it that way? And I would make the choice. And you know, it gives you a real power of control. It definitely replaces a scuff controller foundation, and I think it's one of the best things I've come across so far in relation to any kind of scuff controls. The fact that they're going to come out with additional triggers, because the triggers could be removed easily because they're really primarily held by a synergistic magnet, and they are snug and solid. They don't pop off, meaning that you would be worried that by being with a magnet it would easily pop off, but it doesn't. So it must be a pretty strong magnet, but either way they're easily replaceable. I'm glad to hear they're going to come out with different ones, and unfortunately until I try the scenario in relation to using headsets and the microphones within the headsets, and if they work, because of the way it latches on, you do have to actually purchase an earphone or microphone that relates to the Strikepad in its own. And with that information in place, should I come across any critical information that may have been left out or will be discovered, it will be included in. And this is tag number 913960. Out.